Tuesday Airport Advisory Board meeting. We're usually always on Thursday. This is July 9th meeting, and if everyone could silence their cell phones, we would appreciate that. Tammy, would you call the roll?
Chair Dempsey?
Here.
Vice Chair Starley?
Here.
Member Lester?
Here.
Member Mabe?
Here.
Member Caudell?
Here.
We're waiting on Member Norval.
Is Gary doing?
This morning he said he was coming.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll press on and he can join us when he shows up. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, presentation. We do not have any presentations as I understand it for today. Is that correct? Okay. Item 3 on our agenda is public input. This is opportunity for the public to speak to the advisory board. This part of the meeting is a monologue, not a dialogue. We don't answer questions or have discussion, but we give the citizens an opportunity to present. Do we have anyone that would like to present today? If you would come forward to the microphone and introduce yourself and your address, where you live.
Yes.
And you've got 3 minutes.
Philip Luizo. I currently live at 704 South Atlantic. I have some property and a business that's located right adjacent to the airport, to the west side of the current hangars that you have, the rows of hangars. I'm on the west. I have there's a gentleman that's coming in. I didn't formally bring anything to the table today. I just wanted the opportunity to speak with the board about TTF, to allow the property that we currently have, 5.6 acres, and work something out with the airport to make it beneficial for the airport and allow for growth and revenue for the airport if we could tie in that land that we have. I also have a building adjacent directly west of the property that I own, another 20,000 square foot building that's adjacent to that, and in the future, should something work out, I mean, we could expand into the other 20,000 square foot buildings that we have behind, west of that. So it's west of the current strips of hangars. I believe that if we could put something together that's beneficial for the airport for its growth, as well as revenue generating opportunity, and I'm willing to work on several different models, because there's a lot of different ways of, no airport's the same. There's a lot of different ways of doing a lot of different things. So I'm just looking for, if you guys could dig a little deeper into the TTF to allow an easement to tie into the property that we have adjacent to the airport. And while I put together some options that would appease and allow growth for the airport.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
Philip Luizo, Luizzo. And I seen that they had a meeting here. Arvin and I had spoke very, very briefly, didn't go into any type of details at all. But I am offering up the property that we do have to see if there's a benefit for the airport and revenue generating. So I'm on the list to get a hangar, and I believe they changed the rules of the hangar by asking for $100 or $150 up front to wean off the list, but it's still years to go, and I've been on it for a while. So I'm sure there's a lot of other people like me, that's obviously in front of me, and maybe some past me, that I would believe that they would love hangars at New Smyrna Beach Airport. The idea, and I know my time is running short, 19 seconds, but my idea is to build
18 seconds left.
18. My idea is to build executive hangars for those larger planes that maybe can't accommodate today, as well as smaller hangars to help the airport allow for additional hangars. But that could all be worked out, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Excuse me, we had a couple people come in. Was there anyone else that wanted to make a public comment during the public input session? We're good? Okay. Consent agenda, consider approval of the Airport Advisory Board regular meeting minutes from April 25th. Okay. I reviewed those and gave my comments to Arvin and Tammy already. Did anybody else have any?
Just what I
comments?
mentioned to Tammy, that I was not present for that meeting.
That's
And
correct.
it shows that I
yeah.
was on the,
Okay, we'll fix that.
Yep, sorry.
Okay.
To clarify on that, I was 20 minutes late for that meeting, but I was present for the meeting, but I didn't claim being present during roll call, so I don't know how that should be.
You'll be
Recorded.
reflected here.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to correct the attendance portion
Yes.
of the minutes? Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
all right, very good. Okay, I'm just going to make a quick note of that. Arvin, item number 5, the airport noise abatement, if you want to, well, if that's you or Jacob, I'm not sure. If you want to go and press on with that, you're welcome to.
I'll take that, thank you. Let's see here, let me just get my screen centered for you. So we continue to meet with our primary flight school, Epic, who I want to thank for being in attendance today at this meeting, and I also want to thank for their efforts over the past 18 months. I'm going to share a few slides that of activity. Basically, this shows trends for predominantly one of the main neighborhoods that has been the focus, which there has been some improvement overall, is Inlet Shores. So this chart here shows year over year how many flyovers there are every month. And just put this in perspective, both years we had a slight uptick in February and March, but traffic overall. This year, one of the things that contributed to more flyovers was all the construction. So 1129 was more heavily used in April, and so when 1129 is in operation, it's just one of those things where we do see an uptick. It's just inevitable. Just as a percentage of total operations, less than 1%. When you took the total operations that are occurring every day in New Smyrna Beach, less than 1% of the time are they flying over that community. And that's really we're at a new low, historic low right now. I show this to show just how important and how many operations Epic does as a percentage of the total airport overall. And you can see, it remained, or through May, it was record-breaking, higher than last year. As of right now, it did dip a little bit in June. All flight traffic slowed down, as it does, typically sometimes in the summer. Epic, even though they are 80% of the traffic, they represented only 16% of the flyovers in June, which I think speaks to how hard they're working to be a part of the solution. This is really a summary of all the schools. I work with and continue to communicate with all the major flight schools in the area. Those players being Epic, Embry-Riddle, Phoenix East, and Air America. Embry-Riddle, those are, I would say, in order of their activity. Epic is obviously very high. Embry-Riddle is about 3% of our total operation. Phoenix East is 1%. Air America is 2%. So in compared to the whole, they represent a small number. They sometimes, though, represent a high number of noise abatement violations because they are based at another airport, and it requires, continued education on their part, and we're relying on them to, make those efforts. Whereas Epic has come to the table as a participant that was actually based here at New Smyrna Beach. So Embry-Riddle and especially Embry-Riddle has struggled a little bit more in this. As you can see, they represent as many flyovers in terms of as a percentage as Epic does, and yet they are here far fewer, far less. This month they did improve a little, but there's still room there. I think they're probably one of the most. I'd say they're the ones that have the most room for improvement. Air America kind of fluctuates up and down. That's a little tougher one. They're a little bit more Sometimes they're doing well, sometimes they're not. This past month, that 13%, that came from just one student who was, just repeatedly flying over the neighborhood again and again and again. When we come to touch and goes, we had relaxed in a test to test some of the recommendations that have been recommended by the advisory board. We had relaxed some of the language for a couple months, and that's why you saw those numbers go to 0. And then we saw that really wasn't working because our complaints just jumped up quite a bit. And so until we, and I'll get into the noise workshop or the noise public meeting that we're going to have here in a few weeks, but until we have that public meeting, we've kept the same standards in place that we have. Epic did have some challenges this month with some touch and goes after hours. Those have been addressed, and in fact, the individual responsible was terminated as a result. So I think that speaks again to the efforts that they are making. Just to highlight a few things from our meeting that occurred July 3rd. President myself, Tammy, Shane Williams, the Director of Flight Operations, and Ryan, who is their noise abatement officer. We're in attendance. The operations count for June had declined from May. We went over some of the taxiway alpha reconstruction phase changes, which I'll go over in more detail shortly when we go over capital improvements. They did, like I said, they terminated one instructor. 2 other instructors were given final warning. So probably it goes without saying that those efforts are, they're taking this very seriously. We did talk to them a little bit about I'm attending the safety meeting coming up this Friday, and I'll share a little bit more about that at our next meeting to the reason. Any questions on the information, the data that I've shared here?
I have a question.
Yes.
The first termination that you mentioned, was that ATC or was that Epic?
That was an Epic. Yeah, if it's an air traffic control request, or if there's some extenuated circumstance like, hey, it was a maneuver that was required for a check ride or whatever it may be, those are forgiven. Those are not counted. This was specific to after hours touch and goes, or I think it might have been on a holiday, and it was something that had been counseled already. It was a repeat offense many times. So they have a procedure. They're not just, terminating somebody the first time this happens. They sit down with them, they educate, they make sure they understand it. It happens again, it's a verbal warning. They have a whole process. Their human resources department has a process that they're following. So it's not just, hey, one, and
So that's a total of 3 people that were let go?
Over the course of time, I'm not sure how many people have been, since we've been doing this for the past 18 months. I honestly, I don't know that number without asking them.
I know that there have been at
2.
least one other that was terminated.
There's a few others that are on counseling at this time that could result in termination if they continue, if they don't, make corrections.
So just to clarify, there was the one termination
This month.
and then this month, but then there were 2 other people, because you mentioned 2 other people
That were issued.
that are being corrective action
Right.
through Epic Aviation.
Right.
Okay.
I think there's more than that maybe have gotten a verbal, hey, just a counseling session. But what I was told is there's 2 that are on final. So it's kind of that final stage, like, hey,
Yeah.
get on board, or that's it. So
Well, I'd like to thank Epic for jumping on board and following what our requests have been as board members to cut that down for the citizens of New Smyrna Beach, because those after hours are probably some of the most offensive to the citizens of New Smyrna Beach, and I know that's one of their hot buttons, and understandably so. So thanks to Epic for taking corrective action on that.
also want to remind everybody that we have a public meeting regarding airport noise on August 8th at 5:30 p.m. in this room. It's August 8th at 5:30 p.m. We will have advertisements in the newspaper. We have road signage going up on 2 different places, social media, trying to get the word out as best we can to make sure that we have, as much participation as we can in that. There may be, I strongly believe there will be at least one, if not most of the city commissioners in attendance as well. So this is an opportunity for us to have a dialogue with our community, not just presenting of facts, which we will be doing, but also engagement opportunities for those who have continued concerns. But it's an opportunity, mainly the main focus is to make sure everybody understands. We had a public meeting in the form of this, of this format. Our consultant will be in attendance that evening, and we're looking forward to having a good session, a good opportunity to speak and converse with everyone. I don't think I have anything else on noise at this point, unless you had any other questions or comments.
Okay, so 5B, the noise study review, that was relative to your comments on the upcoming August meeting here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Just want to make sure. All right. Old business?
None.
New business?
No.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to the airport manager update.
So I'll bring it up on the screen here, Jacob. Oops. Okay, I'll kick it off just with our vision that we are the aeronautical gateway to the community, and that we strive to provide users with safe first-class aviation facilities to promote economic development and to ensure our long-term financial sustainability. We have a lot of capital improvement projects that we're going to get a brief update from Jacob. We're going to go a little out of order because I have a video to show you all, but you could go ahead and tackle this, and then I'll bring up that video if you want to go ahead and talk about.
Good afternoon. So CIP has been chugging along. We're finally making some progress. It seems like many items were held up for a long time, and I think we're finally making headway there, which is really rewarding, I think, for the whole airport. Obviously for us, we're really excited about it, but there are just some items that took a while due to varying reasons. So like it says there, backup AWAS is complete. That finally did get finished, and we had some items to loose ends to fix when that was completed, and Mr. Zeiler helped us in the tower with his items that he needed to have fixed, and then I went out and replaced some things on the AWAS that needed to be done after the fact that weren't part of the project. So now that's all been working, and to my knowledge has been a good thing, for redundancy. It's not a true backup in a sense where it's a whole secondary tower, but
Can you get just a little closer to the microphone?
that's
That
fine.
rain is it's washing you out.
It's not a true backup in a sense. It's not a secondary tower, but it's a backup AWAS in that, if the primary has any reason to fail, hopefully this one will pick it up. If nothing else, it's redundant. So in terms of the information, so that's good. Taxiway Alpha we're switching over tomorrow to work area C, which later Arvin will show a video talking about that and show the diagram, how that'll be affecting the airport. We're going to set up appropriate NOTAMs for that, but A and B are complete, and there is a level of paint on it. They have to come back and paint some more of it when they do a final painting for the rest of it, but A and B are complete, and it's a beautiful looking taxiway. Avcon's done a great job. So happy with that. We're moving along. Fuel farm improvement. So fuel farm improvement, more or less, it's a rehab. And the rehab, we are finally going to be getting a pre-bid mid to late July, and then bid opening in August for that. So looking forward to getting the rehabilitation done on that fuel farm. to add that third tank. This is one of the items that's been taking a while, but that's more so due to vendors. When we bid last, we had some issues with the last bid, and vendors didn't really necessarily want to bid on it for a decent price based on the items that were in that previous bid. So we've gone back, redesigned some things, fixed the bid, putting it back out for bid so we can hopefully have, more competitive thing to be out there for vendors to want to go after, so we can get our third tank, get the rehabilitation of the existing tanks, and move on. So, I know I'm really excited for that. I think the airport as a whole, long term, will be really benefited by having an additional avgas tank. But that additional tank will, if you remember, we'll have the ability to switch to jet if we need to, or a alternative fuel if that becomes a thing that we would ever be able to offer at New Smyrna. So it's nice to have that ability. So that's making headway. Admin building, so obviously the design's still going on. We're working towards doing I believe it's a 60% is next. And we're going to bring in our IT department to help us with that next portion of it. We're looking hopefully by the end of this year, beginning of next year, to start breaking ground on that. But that's chugging along, so we're excited. ATC rehab, that's finally been closed out. You guys have already seen the finished product, but the paperwork's finally been done. The FAA is satisfied. The FDOT wasn't part of it. FAA is satisfied, and so we're moving on. Taxiway Bravo 725 design is going along as well. I think that's also about a 60%. And AFCON's doing a beautiful job with that design. We're looking forward to getting that project underway. We're not looking forward necessarily to the reduction of some pavement, but long term it'll be good, in terms of safety for the pilots and, for the taxiway itself, and getting everything realigned, fixing that area down there where Delta goes all the way to the end of 25, making that Bravo as it should be, fixing some things, geometry, things of that nature. So that's coming along. And then the 725 Pappy electrical vault, that design's about to start, but we've already got some ideas on what we're going to be doing there, and hopefully working on getting an additional grant for a generator, so maybe we can save some money in that project using other money for the generator, and then hopefully build a bigger electrical vault. None of that is for sure, but that's what we're working on trying to do, so we can get, have our cake and eat it too, essentially. So that's exciting. Then T-Hanger F rehab, that has been completed. And again, that's a closeout, and that was with the FDOT, and again, a great job. We're trying to do more rehabs on the field for the existing buildings we have, so that way we can improve the things that tenants are they're seeing that there's some issues we know we're working on. So having F done, seeing that result, having the tenants be extremely happy about that, we're looking forward to do that with additional hangars around the airfield. So all good things. I don't know if you have any questions on those items or not. Okay.
I had a chance to look at the storage shed yesterday, and I think
Yes.
the electricians were doing some minor work in there yesterday, but that looks awesome.
Beautiful shed. Yeah, they did
Yeah,
a great job.
it
Yeah, and they
looks-
were able to, the company that built it, Eversafe, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it was Eversafe, they had a crew come out and they built that thing in a day. So they did a great job, and
Yeah.
it'll serve a lot of great things for us and for our equipment and for a little workshop for our guys. So yeah, it's great.
I like the fact that it was built kind of tall, and with those roller doors, it's going to have airflow through there, so it looks good. Looks
Thank
good.
you. Yes, it
Guys
looks
did a
great.
good job on that one.
Thank you.
So if we could just jump back to Taxiway Alpha here for a minute. Here's a shot of what has been complete. Basically, most of the project is, the pavement is down, the lights are working. We did a test yesterday all night, ran them for about 24 hours. The lighting is working, the signage is up to date. We spent about 3 hours this morning doing final walkthrough, cleaning, blowing off. And I'm happy to report that as of about noon, we opened up runway 220 is back open for use. Alpha is open and ready for use, except for between Echo and Charlie. That is closed. That will remain closed for the rest of the project. I'll share a video here in a little bit of just kind of what it's like to drive down or to taxi down that stretch. But so far, everything is looking good. We will have some punch items, I'm sure, that we've got to address. That's half rate paint that's on there, so it's not, full rate, but it's good enough to get us by until, the rest of the project is done, and then the asphalt has to cure a little bit before you can put full rate paint on it, so that it won't damage the asphalt. So ahead of schedule, we anticipate being complete. I didn't see the exact date, but estimated right now, maybe end of August or before that, we should be done. Again, here's the diagram. Now, this week, Taxiway Charlie is open because there's no construction going on the remainder of this week. However, starting back next week, July 15th, Monday, what will be closed is Taxiway Alpha between Echo and Charlie, and Taxiway Charlie between runway 29 and the south ramp. And also that little apron connector there that connects the ramp to Alpha, that will also be closed. So I think having a lot of the airport back open is going to be some relief, provide hopefully some relief to our folks on the tower who have been working so hard to, make the airport. Hats off to Jim and his team for everybody working so hard these past few months, despite the runway closure and the taxiway closure. I think they did a great job, even handling some emergency landings. They did it flawlessly, even having one of our busiest months ever recorded of almost 20,000 operations, and they did that. So I want to thank them for that, for their efforts. And to our construction team, we've had no good safety records so far. We'll keep working towards that.
That pile of sand that's down there on the mid-bottom right, is that relative to the construction that's going on there? That's what that's being used?
It's temporarily being stored there until they can find another spot for it. They ask if they could put it. You're talking about the one just
Right.
off US 1 there?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that should be gone. They're looking for a spot for it right now. They just ask if they could temporarily put it there for...
I wasn't sure. I didn't know if the city was getting a head start on a
Oh, no.
hurricane
Oh.
sandbags.
Yeah,
Because
that would
they-
be a good use for
They
it.
usually put it right there on the corner by industrial, and I
Right.
didn't know if it, I was thinking to myself, boy, they're getting going early on that.
Yeah.
But it made sense that it was tied to this. Okay, thank you.
As you mentioned, the shed is now up, which will allow us to, once we get the CO, the electricians have been here this week to get electric to the building. Once the city inspects it and gives us our certificate of occupancy, we'll be moving out of a hangar that we've been using, as many know, and we should not have ever done that, but we were.
How much
And
hangar space does that free up?
That it's just one free T hangar.
One-
So
I
it's, I
thought
think
it would
roughly
be just one.
1,000 square feet or so.
Okay.
But you'll be able to fit anything that will fit in those. So
Okay.
and that's obviously revenue generating space that the airport should not have been using, but nevertheless we did, and we worked to try to correct that. It did take a little bit longer than we would have liked, but we're at the finish line. Any questions on capital improvements before I move ahead into some other updates?
Just I just wanted to share with the board that I had made a comment to Arvin. We've been looking at the jack bolt plaque and the propeller that Gary installed in front of the admin building, and my recommendation is that we keep that with the new building and try and integrate that into the new building, because we're going to make that parking lot in front where it's sitting right now. But that's a great memorial. It was really well done, and I think there's a good opportunity here to incorporate that into the new building itself, right up in front of it, so that people that come and visit will have the opportunity to see it there instead of trying to remote it somewhere else. We just keep it right part of the building.
So, Jim, I thank you. I think that you're right, and we will talk with our engineers about how we can make all that work together.
Okay, all right, good.
So thank you for your comments on that.
Any other comments or concerns about capital improvements?
I've got a couple of questions. Or I've got one. Let me start with one question. This may or may not have been asked previously, but I want to know or put on record or request for runway 220. Is there anything on record or any scheduled plans to address the condition of that runway, number one, possible approach for probably 02 for that runway? I don't know that we would get one for 20 because of Daytona's airspace, but is there anything written, scheduled, planned to try to get and work towards getting that reconditioned? Because it's a very volatile, very well-used runway for the airport that also takes traffic a different direction. And it would be really helpful if we could get that in a better condition.
So, great question. Good timing, because we have been discussing that some for the past year or so. Our current master plan states that we will rehabilitate that runway. However, the funding is an issue because currently the FAA doesn't, based on our most recent master plan and runway study, the FAA doesn't recognize that runway as being necessary. However, we went back, and now that we have VERTOWER, the program that counts operations, we had our consultant, one of our consultants, take a cursory look at this and say, do you think that our operations have increased from the time the study was done until now that we could take a second look at this? So they did a cursory, just kind of a not too much of a deep dive, but a little bit, and said they do think that it's worth doing another runway study, another wind. It would be a wind analysis, it would be a runway analysis, and it would be to determine if we qualify for, not only primary, secondary, crosswind, all that. So they think that we can make that case. I have a meeting scheduled with the Florida Department of Transportation at the end of the month. Our goal is to sit down with them and look at all of our projects coming up in the next few years and determine if we can make the case for either a new master plan, which would then cover that runway analysis, or just doing a runway analysis separately on its own. Because if we can then take that justification back to the FAA and say, this qualifies for funding, that changes the whole story.
Absolutely.
Because at that point, we could then qualify for funding, and what was only 80% funded project could now be 98% funded. And so that would make it much more appealing and much more within our grasp financially to be able to do. We recognize that it's a valuable runway. As to your question about the approach, I will have to take that under investigation, and I'll have to look into that further. I don't know the answer. So allow me to research that, and I'll follow up with an email to you all with what I find out.
Thank you.
I can tell you that the runway, the taxiway Bravo and runway 725, that is expected to address the current restrictions we have as far as night approaches into runway 725.
Is it my understanding that night operations for 725 for approaches is now available?
No.
It's not still?
No.
Okay.
No.
Getting 725
I had a Daytona air traffic controller tell me recently that it was.
No.
Coming in, I was like, I don't think it is.
No.
So
Okay.
that's been a priority for us to
Right.
get that, because we're operating under not full operational authority. We have a provisional
Correct.
Right.
operating
Yeah.
certificate because of 725 and that approach, yeah, okay.
I do have, sorry, board, but I did have some other
Sure.
Go ahead.
things.
That's why we're
I
here.
have. And can we get an update for the next meeting on the wait list for hangars for all of us to actually know what that is?
Sure.
So that we can be prepared when citizens question
Yep.
that or ask questions about that.
So I'm not sure if it's been updated, but the information is generally available on our website, nsbairport.com. But I don't know I don't know when it was updated last.
Yeah, if you go to nbsp there's a tab at the top that says hangar rental. If you slide down, there's 4 PDFs, and the different PDFs talk about the policies and so forth. But at the bottom, you'll see T-hangar waiting list, and I update that weekly. The same with the executive. The executive doesn't move too much, but the T-hangar...
So Jake, that has been updated?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there should be a date below it that says last updated, and so you can verify which date was last updated.
Okay,
And he'll show you
beautiful.
now.
And last but not least, Arvin, to the north of the most recent hangars, what is the timeline, or what is the plan? Because I know that's slated for more hangars there. What is the plans on that, or the estimated time frame, or where's the city at with that?
So we were planning to begin designing those as early as next year. That's kind of up in the air. That's one of the things we're meeting about this at the end of this month, is to determine we have needs all over the airport. We also have, as you probably know, a need to rehabilitate Hangar E. It's almost as bad as Hangar F was. And we have other hangars that are in D as well. So, not to mention the other commercial hangars. So, the prioritization of that is like, we're going to go in there and kind of see where our funding stands, what's going to be available, what the time frame is, and we really want to build more hangars. At the same time, for revenue generation, at the same time, we want to maintain what we have.
Correct.
So
is there an update as to the condition of D&E that's been presented?
no, we don't have. So we're looking at our last meeting, not our advisory board meeting, but our last group meeting that when we met with one of our consultants who helps us put together our plan. That's one of the things that came up is we've kind of got to decide which direction we want to go. Do we want to design new hangars, or do we need to take a pause on that, because some of these have corroded maybe beyond a point where they should have, and we really need to address those issues. So I don't have an answer, but I can get you one. How's that?
Yeah, I think that would be good, because if we have immediate tenants, if we have tenants that are current tenants that are paying for a service, and we're putting them in a bad position of liability with their aircraft, that probably ought to be something that we know ahead of time and not be reactive, but versus a little bit more proactive is what I'm thinking. And maybe get an update as a condition so that we make sure that we don't have any liability from an airport standpoint as a city, and make sure that we're making sure that's a priority with funding allocation to mitigate that risk.
We also had a proposal given to us, which we haven't signed, but we had a proposal done to study all of our buildings and analyze and prioritize what's critical, like from an engineering standpoint, actually have an engineer go through everything and say, okay, some of them may have been left a little longer than they should have, if not, but where are we at? And actually develop from that a strategy and plan, like a 10-year, 20-year plan of, okay, year 5, we need to rehabilitate this roof. So we understand.
Are we currently receiving any complaints from tenants in building D&E?
Some. I think rust, falling on airplanes, that was an issue in F, which we addressed with that rehab. D has roof leaks. D has a little bit of corrosion here. We're kind of spot fixing things, but it really needs a full. It's at that point where I think we're going to need. That's why we're really looking hard at having an engineer to help us determine, should we rehabilitate this, or is it,
What's
better
the
off?
best call? What's the best route to go?
Correct.
Rehabilitate or redo?
We have multiple buildings that we're at that point with, and some.
How old are those buildings?
D is 80s, 70s, late 70s, 80s,
I think D is early 90s.
early 90s. Being so close to the salt water just seems to accelerate the aging process for some of these buildings. That's been the thing what we've seen.
Yeah, with that facilities condition proposal, as far as researching to seeing how we best use our money now and into the future to maintain those buildings. Like you mentioned, yes, we do get some reports of different issues with the buildings. We're intimately aware of that, and we're working to, we take care of those issues as they come up. We don't like the whole whack-a-mole thing. We don't like to be reactive, so that's our goal with this facilities condition management that we're going to be doing, so we can be proactive, and why we've been looking to use our subsidized dollars to, rehab these buildings. So long term, the tenants are happier and we get a better product rather than us trying to, patch these buildings together. Because T-hangars in general, especially design and building new hangars, is a low priority for the FDOT and the FAA. And so, we want to have our project compete well, and they will pay for it, but, it's not, they would rather the money go towards, either existing buildings we have to fix them up, or obviously anything on the airfield infrastructure-wise. So it's just managing that, and trying to use our dollars more effectively, our local dollars, so that, we can make our tenants, keep our tenants as happy. And like you said, they're paying good money to be there, and we want them to have, good quality buildings to be in. So,
Yeah, my thought on that is in condos, associations, you have a reserve account. You plan for the things that are going to come down the road. And if we know that we're only getting 30 to 34 years life expectancy due to conditions in our budgets, we probably ought to have something in there for these things. That way it's not a spot, addressing issue, but to where there's actually a line item in our budget is my thought process. Say, okay, the airport's been here a long time. We've had hangars a long time. We know what the life expectancy of these hangars are going to be, regardless of what the manufacturer or the builder says. We know that we're getting about this life expectancy on these hangars, so we probably ought to have a line item in our budget to address this and make sure that we're budgeting ahead of time in regards to the funds from the city to either recondition, whatever the best route is, either to recondition or rebuild these as needed, because insurance claims with rust or whatever, damage to an aircraft, we definitely don't want to have that, because that jacks up the cost. So I'm just trying to look at maybe suggesting and it may be in place. This is me being ignorant to if that is already in place, but maybe just a suggestive look into saying, hey, let's look at, do we have a line item? How are we planning for this now and in the future, so that we don't have to keep revisiting that, so that there's already something that's already laid out. There's a structure and plan set that says this is our plan. We're going to recondition this every 30 years, or we're going to reuse them or rebuild them every 30 years and go out for an RFP or whatever we have to do. But some type of plan written so that those funds are accounted for ahead of time was the reason for my statement, or my question, I guess you could say.
right,
condo-
that's exactly the purpose behind the
Yeah.
facilities condition management that we're going to be doing. So we do have that money, set aside, and even to a point where, we're looking at, okay, well, if we have different buildings, based on the age of the buildings, these different buildings, let's say X percentage of that revenue is going to go towards the rehabilitation of that building. So that way, and we're reevaluating how the finance portion of it in the city, you may or may not be aware, but has a new finance director now. So we're going to be working closely with him soon to try and reevaluate the way that, they help us with our finances, the way we run ours, and that way we can kind of be a little more efficient long term.
Thank you.
It's interesting you brought up the condo association, because that's where this idea was born, is the reserve study that they have to do. And when we approached our engineer, that's the example that we gave them, was like, hey, this is what we're looking for. Can you? And so we did have that. Now it's a matter of, all right, where are we going to find that money? So it's all comes back to the finance. And Jacob brought up a good point. We have a new finance director. I'm meeting with him tomorrow to discuss a lot of things. About some things, how we can be better at, because, the city itself is very focused on the city overall, and we're an enterprise fund, so it's just a little bit different. It's a little bit different, it's because it's a business and a public utility, so very good point.
Okay.
Oh, I pulled up the website real quickly to show you where you can find hangar rental information. Under here, under the top bar here, you can see hangar rental. You scroll down, there's the policy, blank lease, and then the hangar, and then it gives a little note here as to when it was last updated. So it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So let's see here. Well, probably won't want to pull that up just in case nobody wants to that scene, but we do give people the option to have a code. If they don't want their name on there, they can have some type of code. So, any other questions on that? So I will just get into, as you are all aware, we have several non-for-profit leases. Those are in the process of being revised. At the last meeting, we were requested to bring the drafts. They're currently in legal review, so we're not ready to share. I did want to just note that what we're working towards with each of these entities, the reason that it's important is that the FAA considers the use of land for not-for-profit. So somebody who's got a 100-year lease and they're paying $1 a year, allowing the use of land below fair market value has to meet criteria. Otherwise, it's not, it's in violation of our grant assurances. So one of the main criteria at this point that we need each of those organizations to meet, and we're working with them to do that, is, quote, allowing the community purpose, if allowing the community purpose will maintain or enhance positive community relations in support of the airport. So we're working with each of those entities to see what value they will bring, and that's the status of that. That's really the only missing piece. We have ideas for each of them. I think we're very close to making that happen. And any questions on that?
No, not for me. Any other questions?
Have we gotten any response from any of those people?
Yes, we're talking very actively with the Garden Club. VFW has been fairly good communication. The Lions Club is a smaller organization, and they haven't communicated as much, but I'm confident that we can work together to finalize this agreement.
Okay.
So I will briefly touch, and I didn't want to bring this up to alarm anybody, but I think it's important that you all are aware that you may know, but some airports in Florida and other states are seriously considering the implementation of landing fees to include general aviation aircraft, which is something that I think for the most part you never see or never have seen up until this point. There's new technology that allows that to be easier to collect. I want to be clear that that's not something that we're considering. At least that's not my recommendation. I want to bring that forth for your consideration, of course. But our airport, there's an old saying, you've been to one airport, you've been to one airport. They're very, very, very unique. It's important that I'm very clear about this following statement, okay? Landing fees can never be used to discriminate against or deter a type or types of use. So that's illegal. So if I was to say I'm going to implement a landing fee because I want to discourage somebody from landing here, that's a violation of federal law. You can lose your grantage, you can lose your funding, etc. So some airports can justify the landing fees because they need the money, okay? In our particular case, when 80 to 90% of our traffic is from somebody who's based at our airport, they're not gonna pay. Between the tenants, between Epic, between all the other users, those users wouldn't pay landing fees because they're based here. They already contribute, they buy fuel, they pay rent, etc. You never have a situation, or hardly ever would you see somebody pay landing fee because their revenue that you collect from them is already wrapped up in their rent and in their fuel purchases. So just like the noise study indicated, the consultant did not recommend that here because it's just simply not worth this. Those juice is not worth the squeeze. So you're talking about 10% of your traffic, you're going to charge $3 a landing, and you're going to make, some minuscule amount of money, and you're going to upset a lot of users, in my opinion. Now, I'm here to ask if, that's that's shared by others. I've talked to some pilots, you know, I think that's a bad, you know, for me personally, I don't think it fits with our airport. Nothing against any other airport that might do it. There are other airports that are in a very different situation than us. 99% of their traffic is coming from other airports, and maybe they don't have enough revenue to help maintain the airport. Maybe that's a case for them. They're going to have to make that case and justification to the FAA. I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but by all appearances, it looks very, very likely that some airports will do this. So I wanted to be, you know, transparent about it because I'm sure it will come up. Hey, why doesn't New Smyrna charge landing fees? Or, you know, thank goodness New Smyrna doesn't charge. Like, depends on what side of the fence they're on. So I wanted to hear from all of you on your thoughts on this, or if you'd even heard of it, if you were aware of it.
Well, we'll start down here with Celeste.
Oh, we're aware of it. I mean, if you fly as much as we have and landed in a lot of different airports, you know, it is a fact. We just pay and whatever. My interest on this is that
But can
I understand what you're saying about, you know, everybody that has the hangar and, you know, all the people that are already in and all that. But, you know, everything is going up to the roof. You know, housing and fuel and everything. So, as much as I hate to say this, I mean, I don't think that it would be that bad to have a landing fee, but I do think that we should do a study on that. Has anybody sat down and called any of the other airports that are local around here? Yes. I mean, I think that would be a great idea. If we could call and find out, say, hey, do you have a landing fee or you don't have one? Just to give us an idea so that the future we can decide, well, you know, like Daytona's got a landing fee, DeLand's got a landing fee, you know, but those, Daytona's a big airport and DeLand is bigger than us too. But of course, you know, Edgewater was putting a landing fee in. So I don't know if it's passed yet or not, and that's a very small airport. But, and then also.
It's a private airport too.
Yeah, it is a private. And then also down in Oak Hill, there's another landing strip down there, and people own that and have the houses and stuff like that. And then there's going to be another one in Oak Hill built, because I've already seen all of their pictures and everything, the plot and everything. I don't know if it's continued to go. I just know that I have seen it, and I know who is doing it. So, and that's very small. It's going to be very small too. So I just think if we could do a little bit of a study, it doesn't have to be huge airports, but it could be airports about the size we are, just to get an idea. I mean, I can go either way, but I think knowledge is power. And so if we have the knowledge, then we can make a good, you know.
I'll make one point just to clarify, because I realized I didn't. User fees are different than landing fees. So everybody has user fees. You know, most people, let's say, well, if you don't buy fuel, an FBO might charge you, you know, a facility fee, or they have a parking fee or something like that. But what I'm specifically talking about is landing fees for general aviation airports. So aircraft under 6,000 pounds. And we have done a study, or we didn't do a study, it's already been done. The knowledge is out there. Virtually no one in the United States has a landing fee, most under 6,000 pounds.
Okay.
There may be a few that are slowly coming on board. That is going to change. I do believe that is changing, unless the organizations like AOPA and all those stand up and say, hey, no, we're against it. But yes, you're right. They have a sense, there is a need for collecting revenue. You're absolutely right, and I think that's true at some airports. But I did want to distinguish between a landing fee and a user fee. And we are a public airport, not a private airport, so
Correct.
we cannot do certain things that
Right.
a public airport. private airport can do.
But then when we did that research, we could decide whether or not they're public or private. So that even might be something that, we could do when we did that. Like Spruce Creek. There's another one.
Private.
It's private. So do they do a landing fee? We don't know. I don't think they do. But that would be interesting to know that, areas
So
like that.
typically, I fly a lot.
Yeah.
Typically, what I've actually seen, which is blows my mind, but it's the way it is in aviation, as a lot of things blow our mind sometimes in aviation, is it's a lot of times it's the larger airports that charge a landing fee. And whether they call it a handling fee or a landing fee, it's actually not the smaller airports. I'm not saying I'm for or against it for our airport was, used, but typically it's the larger airports that charge it, which is, you would think that they wouldn't, but it's because they're so busy, they want to discourage, they have commercial traffic going on there, a ton of it, and they want to discourage general aviation from using it, such as Charlotte, such as MCO, so it's really rare to see that on a smaller airport.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't, in all the years, we've been flying for over 50 years, and with all that, we very rarely see that. But that subject is coming upon because of the way everything is changing in the world. So that's the only reason why I'm throwing it out,
Okay.
But it is changing.
Jim, do you have a comment?
I'd rather look at revenue-generating possibilities like additional hangars, additional businesses coming on the airport, elements like that really promote aviation and the flow of aviation as opposed to something that would inherently discourage people from landing here, and a landing fee would do that.
Okay. David?
I agree with what Jim just said. That always feels to me like it's trying to discourage business rather than encourage business. So,
Yeah, and I'll go on record with the same. I agree with, likewise. I would definitely agree with that, that I think it would be not the right move, and that there's other opportunities, such as the gentleman that spoke today, that if there's other opportunities where we can generate revenue on an ongoing basis for the airport to help do other things.
Okay. You got your feedback.
Thank you. So moving on to a similar topic, since we're talking about revenue generation, so another hot topic is land development. As you know, we are working on an RFP for land that we already have. One of the reasons we aren't looking as hard at landing fees is because we have other sources of revenue that we can rely on, and although we could, we can make the case that we could make more, we'd have to balance that. But I think, the gentleman that spoke today about the through the fence agreement, what he's proposing is that he has land adjacent to the airport and he wants access, so he wants to build hangars, which he will then lease and he'll make money, and in return he would pay the airport for access. So the FAA strongly advises against entering into these agreements, although they don't give it a hard no, they make it very difficult. And the reasons are numerous, but security issues, lack of control. But I think the biggest one that I think that we should seriously consider is how it affects the airport's long-term ability to generate money, because in a sense it makes them a competitor of the airport itself. Now, the argument is, of course, we can't build hangars fast enough to meet demand, so there is that demand out there. But we have land that, if somebody were wanting to build a hangar, they could certainly request land to build a hangar the land that we own. So therefore, we could generate money from that land lease. So I think one of the things, the reason that I put this on the agenda is a discussion. It's not a vote, but a discussion to keep in mind, when people are, the this isn't going to be the first request, or it's not the last. There'll be more. Keep in mind, we're an enterprise fund, so we have a responsibility to operate like a business. So while we might make a small amount of money with a through-the-fence agreement, we're relinquishing, what we have here is, a business that has limited resources. Our land is a limit. So when you're giving somebody else access, you're saying, okay, they can come in and operate, and there's no rule, there's no requirement by the FAA that says you have to grant that. In fact, like I said, they discourage it. Maybe there's a way to make it work. But, the reason I'm bringing it before you, so it's not just me making a decision. Ultimately, the city commission has the final authority. And I was very clear with the gentleman. I told him, my reservations are that in a sense, I'm granting you access to be my competitor. Whereas if we own the land, if he's willing to sell it to us, now that's different. We would buy it from him, and you say, okay, that seems like counterproductive. But if we're retaining the land, we know that we control it, here and forevermore. Then, because in the past there's been a practice. I'm not going to say who, we don't know, but in the past, many airports were not alone. We're in the business of just giving away land left and right and now we regret it. And now we're trying to buy land back. Another gentleman who's approached us saying he's interested in selling us land. Those are golden opportunities which the FDOT will help us participate. So in a sense, I feel, and this is only my opinion, okay, and I'm asking for yours, but I want to educate you a little bit. In my opinion, it's kind of the opposite. We're doing the opposite when we're allowing somebody to just come in and say, yeah, I own land next to the airport, but I'm going to give you access for $500 a month or some minuscule amount that has no real long-term value to us. Now he's going to build buildings that we don't own. We don't own the land, we don't own the buildings, and now we have somebody else who. So I think it's something that, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just cautioning you very strongly, is that it has red flags attached to it. Handle with caution.
Well, we appreciate your caution. But the gentleman did mention that he was he was open for consideration of alternative approaches. Mm-hmm. So I think that's worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I agree.
Just take a look at how many people are on the wait list? 40, 50?
Around that number, yep.
Okay. And they've been there a long time. And so that doesn't mean we run out and cut a hole in the fence. Okay. But what it does mean is we should take a look at some type of business arrangement there that is good for us, good for the city of New Smyrna, good for Jack Bolt Field. Okay. And if we can find that in there, great. Maybe we can help with some of this backlog. There's a lot of people that have airplanes that want to base them at our airport. But we don't want, I agree with you, we also don't want to go the other way, to the other direction. So that would be my feedback.
And Jim, just also to your point, we do have land that we're working on putting together to put out for a request for proposal, or whatever ends up being a great agreement for the city and for the airport. But we have land that we are getting surveys on, appraisals on, to determine its value and to see what negotiations would work out well, both for the person that would lease the land to build, it's still land that we own. So that's something that we're still working on doing, just not necessarily through the fence. But to your point, that's a great point. We need to be able to have more hangars available for people to come in, whether they, ranging anything from a light sport to, a mid-sized jet. So that's kind of our vision, and we're just trying to put all the foundation in place for that.
Yeah, and my preference, I think Tim just said a minute ago, is that we build additional hangars, and we have control of that, and we do it right. And and by doing that, of course, we get it was at FDOT that we got the funds for, as I recall, for refurbishing The hangar, that was FDOT funds. So when, I think we have a good path there that we're proceeding on, so. But it should be looked at from a business case standpoint, a classical business case, and let's see where it falls out, what makes sense.
The city purchased a piece of property on the corner of Flagler Avenue and North Peninsula for an ungodly amount of money from a local owner. That property is now back up for sale by the city.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the decision-making of finances, I sometimes have a little concern as to the financial and fiscal responsibility of what we should be doing versus what we do.
Yeah.
That business decision was presented to the public as one thing and didn't work out, and now it's trying to be sold, and it's going to have to be sold at a discount due to a market shift. I think it's smart to look at all business opportunities, because unless you have something you're going to do in the next 30 years that's going to generate money that can quickly be done, like, we have to look at everything, because you said it perfectly that the airport is a business. And if you don't have something that's going to generate revenue to help sustain and help do the things that we talked about, to help do the things with runways, to help do the other things, it may not be the right fit. It may not be a good decision for the airport. But if we don't look past our personal agenda, Arvin, you, none of us up here are going to go out there and buy 20-something acres and develop it tomorrow with a land lease for 30 stinking years and say, that's a great investment, let's go do it. No, it's going to be tough for people to want to do that and spend a large amount of capital to see a return on that when you don't own the land. The ROI is in the ownership of the land. The airport has that ownership of the land. So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to protect my land, but if we don't have the funds to do hangars right now and we can't refurbish D&E, what is the real likelihood of us developing land from a city's perspective? We're just kind of hoarding land, in my opinion, and not looking at other opportunities, and we're just hoarding land when we can't even fix little things right now with our current budget. So why shouldn't we look and take a more exhaustive look just versus, and I understand protecting the land as an airport, and I think your example is really good about last thing we want to do is we don't want to go back and have to go buy land back. I totally agree with that 150%. If it doesn't affect our runways, if it doesn't affect our taxiways, and we don't know what the amount is. You use the example of $500. We could say it's going to be $50,000 a year. We could say it's going to be $100,000 a year as an airport. We can name the number of what it is, but what makes it profitable, and what makes the airport take a look at it and say, you know what, maybe this is a business decision that can fund other things versus just shutting down and hoarding land that we're just talking about an access point. And I'm just saying it may be worth looking at differently than the way we're looking at it. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. You go back 10, 15 years or more, the FAA really got down on through-the-fence agreements and tried to shut them all down at one point. And eventually they negotiated things so it's the way it is now. They still don't like it, but it's not completely shut off. Your comment about, Arvin, having an individual who wants to build a hangar on our airport and doing this long-term lease, that's done in airports all over this country. I've been involved in those in the past at other airports, and it's usually a 30-year lease and then maybe an option to renew for another 10 or another 20 at the end of that lease. And then the airport has the building and ultimately the airport has the building and the land. And I tried to do that when I first moved here 16 years ago, and I was told absolutely not. You can't do that here. So I hope that we can at least look at those other opportunities to do that kind of thing.
So the feedback you're getting is don't shut the door on this. Go look at a good business case and see what makes sense. And if we can find a make sense approach in there, then we'll come back and talk about it.
Is there a number that makes sense? That's the question. Is there a number for the city? Is there a revenue number for the city that makes sense for the city to take a really hard look at that, to say, you know what, that money's too good to pass up? for the citizens of New Smyrna Beach.
I'm sure there is a number, but it's gonna matter,
It's up to him.
it's up to him, yeah.
Yeah, to answer your question about the property for lease, that's the purpose of the RFP that we're putting out there for people who want to build either, you know, standalone hangar just for themselves. I mean, we have interest on this. It's just a matter of, we've got a new economic development director that's coming on board. The current one left, so I was told to put the RFP, even though it's pretty much ready, put it on hold until he gets here and we can, you know, before we kick it off officially. But we're getting calls, you know. There's plenty of individuals who want to build hangars, larger hangars.
We have a great deal of interest, and, you know, I guess a good example of what's been done recently and nearby is in Ormond Beach. There was some hangars that were built, they're condoed, I believe, up in Ormond, and he was able to make the numbers work. You know, and yet, like David mentioned, 30 years, you know, with additional options to renew that are always already in there. So that way it does make sense on the numbers for whoever's going to be investing, and people do find ways to make it work. And so that's the good thing for us, and that's why I want to make the RFP as open to the market as possible, so that way we can let the market dictate kind of, you know, this is what's going to work best for both parties, you know, and whatever we need to do to try and make that work as well is kind of our goal. So we can, an end result, having hangar space for people to use.
Is the RFP that you guys, because you guys had one, didn't you have one out before? Wasn't an RFP out before?
Yes, there was one when Adam was on board that him and Chris Edwards put together. It was a little bit too restrictive, and they admitted that. So we've gone and almost basically reconstructed it, you know, and fixed some of the things that.
Is it for the same area, Jay? Is it for that same area?
West of
The current RFP will not be for that. There will be one in the future for that. We're working on the. Currently, this RFP when it goes out would be for the land that's just south of Epic. It's about 4 or 5 acres. But there is other land, much like that one, that's already had a lot of studies done on it for varying things, you know, including utilities or wetlands or whatever the case
And
may
is the
be.
hope on that you said 4 to 5 acres?
Around that, yep.
Is the hopes to get potentially an FBO there? Another FBO, a larger?
It could potentially. So if you look at and we'll share it with you, you know, you can also pull up on the website, but the master plan shows what that area currently has in there. You can do pen and ink changes to your master plan, but unless we change our master plan, we'd have to do what's in there now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd just be a matter of when the RFP goes out or a master plan comes first, whatever. But yeah, there is some area there you could put an FBO or a corporate flight department or condo the hangars and sell the condoed units, things of that nature.
Okay. Arvin, do you want to continue?
I was going to see if I could pull this up real quick, but while it's pulling up, let's see here. So I'm going to zoom in on, I'm going to share the screen, but this is not probably the best map to show you, but this area here, you're familiar with where the old shade hangars used to be? Is anybody familiar with that? So that area there is depicted on this on the master plan that was put out in 2019. Just as an illustration, shows 4 corporate size hangars in that area.
Okay.
So that's what we're referencing, just as for a quick visual. All right, to quickly review then, to move on to the fuel resolution. The fuel resolution passed. The City Commission approved the new fuel resolution to be effective October 1st. Here is I'm just going to hit the high points. What's been omitted is been drawn through, underlined. For all fuel purchased, the price charged per week shall be the city's cost plus a margin determined weekly by the airport staff to not exceed a margin of $1. It includes the actual price paid by the city for fuel, the actual margin based on the surrounding market, the current cost of fuel, and include a profit margin, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go read it word for word. That's the main change for self-serve retail at the pump. And then the FBOs get an increase, cost plus 26 cents, effective October 1st. Increase of 2 cents annually, not to exceed cost plus 40. And The only other change was emailing of the invoice, and the language is there, is written. Any questions on the resolution that we discussed?
I would point out that the public comments that we got when this was presented the first time, some of that was actually incorporated in your changes, and that's what went.
Yes, it was.
So it's important to get the public comments and feedback on these kind of things. So this is an excellent example of where we did good on that.
And then finally, mosquito control. Just update you there, the FAA 163 determination request has been drafted. We are drafting the lease with an addendum and ordering an appraisal, and that's just for them to acquire about, was it 5 more acres just to the north of where they are now. They're expanding their facility a little bit. And that's the update on them.
Now, is that still going to be dependent on the,
FAA has to give their determination. We had to have some work done by our consultant, and that's where that 163 determination, and basically what they're doing is they're evaluating what part of that land has been released from federal obligations. There was some question about that.
Right.
Because our current master plan doesn't include a proper Exhibit A, which we are getting done. That's included with the Taxiway Bravo project.
yeah. So that'll be next year.
Yep.
That'll be next year when we make that final decision on that.
Well, no,
I mean-
we had mosquito control agreed to pay for that work to be done just for their section,
Oh, okay.
to see
Okay,
if
good.
we could get that determination early. So that section will be provided to the FAA. They'll make their determination. They said the turnaround shouldn't be too long, so we should know in a couple months.
Okay. All right.
Just briefly show you a quick little video of, I guess before I do that, questions?
I'm going to save mine for my comments.
Okay. So, like I said, I actually took this video last week, so some of the sod wasn't in place. But this is pulling on to Taxiway Alpha, just in between Charlie and Echo, and proceeding towards Bravo. So we'll be on the so you see all the new sod, the lights. That's half-rate paint, so it's not full rate. It will be painted again. It is a little cleaner now than when I took this video. But all those lights are new, stormwater, sod, signs. And then as we come up here to runway 220, so yeah, it's
Looks
coming.
good.
It's coming along.
Looks good.
Probably looks better today after the rain, which washed away some of that, a little bit of that sandy look. Questions, comments?
Comments? We can use this for our the member comments too. We can close it out right there with comments if we want to. Celeste, do you have anything?
No, I'm just making my own notes for personal.
Jim?
No, sir.
Okay, I had a couple of things written down. I had a note from a prior meeting that the Sun Trail grant was targeted for July, and that was from the November meeting when we met, and they talked about that, the grant being approved. Is that any progress made on that, or is that still in works?
Still in the works. Last CIP call I was on, They had not received it back yet.
Okay, all right. The airport website is really looking good. We had talked about an app, okay, for hangar owner, or hangar lessee communication with the admin team, that kind of thing. Did you guys have, are we still pursuing that, or is that?
I mean, I'd be happy to. I think that we did get some counsel from our legal counsel, and they've got their reservations. Not to say we can't navigate that if we want to. I think the more so they would prefer if it was something that was tenant-led and we support it, not necessarily we manage it and maintain it. So it's just a matter of looking at those options and seeing if there are any tenants that'd be willing to take that on.
The issue was,
I'm not surprised
There's-
that the lawyers were anxious.
right.
At all.
Well, she said it would be very difficult to maintain records on it, on an app, because they were just not sure how they would do that. So,
Well, I know we had some public comments when we were talking about that, and people seemed to be interested. And I had made a note to remind myself to just check on it later on and see if where we were with
Yeah.
it. Was it because some people will ask me that sometimes? You know, what about that thing that you guys talked about? Because people do watch these meetings remotely and wonder where we are with that.
I have
So
to go back to my notes. I'll find out and I'll send it out. I had sent out an update, but it was just to you all. It didn't go to the public. So
okay,
I will send, or I'll be prepared to talk about it next time so the public is aware.
okay. But the website is awesome. The website.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I also have one of our consultants, Avcon, has their media personnel. She's actually been helping me change some things on it, so she'll be here tomorrow to help refine some things and make it a little bit more professional and trying to do what we can. So again, if anybody else has any comments on that or things that you think need to be improved, please let me know, because we do have ability to basically do whatever with it. So
I think my background is in this. I think it looks really good for the mobile app. I'm actually on it right now for the mobile application, and it looks really good. But to comment off of your statement, one thing that may be an option is actually a website that's formatted for mobile versus actually having an app. Might be another direction that we could look in, because an app creation is expensive. A website is pretty much free on some sites, where we could create a mobile-friendly app for the, to your point, for the users of the airport.
Well, I only brought it up because it had been raised as a possibility at one time, and then it kind of just fell into the weeds, and I hadn't heard anything, so I was just trying to figure out where we were with it. Okay.
We have a lot of comments from users that say, well, not a lot, but I've gotten comments from users who say they'd like a place where they could all chat.
Yeah.
How do we get together? How do we know what's going on? How do we meet?
Yeah.
How do we arrange for get-togethers, things like that?
Okay. The other thing, and it was apparent to me today, we've been pretty busy nonstop with either building hangars or refurbing hangars for years. And I think it would be appropriate for Tim and even Jim, if we had maybe a history kind of a slide that shows this is what we've done. Because as soon as we've built new, and then we started looking back and saying, oh Christ, we need to go back and refurb, and some of it was because of just poor quality work that was done before, materials that weren't properly coated with the steel and everything, and that's why we're getting all the rusting. So we learned a lot. But I think it'd be good for you guys to understand a little better the history of what we've done, and do it by hangar and even by ramp kind of thing. Just a kind of and it doesn't have to be 10 pages, just a page or two, just showing here's what we've done with the hangars, here's what we've done with the ramps, here's what we've done with the runways, here's what we did with the air traffic control tower. I mean, we just...
Maybe just like a timeline. I mean, probably you already have most of it.
You know,
Maybe
so
just an
I'm
easy PowerPoint timeline.
I'm just saying it would be very helpful for the new folks on here. And Dave was gone for a while, so, you know, I think it would help catch the board back up to where we currently are, taking that drive down the taxiway today with what we've done with hangars, taxiways, thing, and it's only a slide or two. It doesn't, go put a ton of effort into it, okay? Just so everybody can have a piece of paper they keep in their notes that shows when we did this,
Yeah.
okay? You
Sure.
guys can do that?
Yes.
thing.
Okay. Jay, Dave?
No comments.
No further comments. I appreciate everybody today and appreciate you guys answering the questions and your help.
Okay.
Can I make one final comment? Just want to thank the staff. I want to thank Jacob for all his hard work on everything. Jacob, been here now a little over 2 years, has been, instrumental in so many different things. He just works incredibly hard every day. And, I joke with him. I was like, stop underachieving, because he's always, if he's not working on getting his multi, he brings so much value to the team, and I just really appreciate him, and I want to just put that on record and say thank you. And same for Tammy. Tammy is the glue that holds us together every day. I mean, she's just there. She's consistent. She keeps us on track, keeps me in order. So I just want to say thank you.
And the
just
board
kind of
agrees with
acknowledge.
that completely. You guys are awesome. And keep the pictures of the inlet coming, okay?
Make it happen.
I'm in an anglers group, and it's awesome. They go nuts when I share them the very most recent picture of the sandbars and what the inlet looks like. So all I need is a time date so I can look at the tide, and that's awesome. So keep those pictures.
Maybe a daily photo. Just go up every morning and then get the photo and then put it on the website. And then this is what it's looking like today.
Okay. All right, when's our next meeting, Tammy?
October? I'm not prepared. October 24th, 2 o'clock.
Okay. All right, very good. I guess our next activity is going to be the August 8th meeting here relative to the noise recommendation, okay?
Yes, and I think my direction was given to have one member of the board here. So whoever that would like to be. Now, we could talk about that offline.
Okay, okay,
I have one question. Can I ask one question?
sure.
Has the complaints gone down? That's the only question. Just yes or no. It's a simple yes or no.
Yeah, they fluctuate. Sometimes we'll go, I think the longest period of time it was almost a month, and we didn't have one, which was a shock. The complaints greatly, I think, decreased to the east of the airport. To the west of the airport, they're very, very predictable every day. And it's just from a few people. So, yeah. I think, would you say yes? Yes, I can say they have. Average has gone down.
On the Inlet Shores, we've got our own Facebook group in Inlet Shores, and it has dropped significantly.
I also think that, I don't know, I've been trying to share it with whoever reaches out in Inlet Shores. A couple of residents in Inlet Shores have reached out to me over the past few months, and I've tried to share with them that the noise page on the website has a comment section. So once they read through the information that we've presented to them based on recent studies, they can also make their comments, and they can also email directly to noise@cityofnsb.com. That is an email we have. I've been trying to share that. I think they told me they were going to share that with the whole community there, but I'm not sure if that actually happened because I'm not part of that Facebook group. But, when you're out in public and you're talking to somebody that brings it up, please share the website. That way it helps us keep track of those things. When they call us, that's great, and we can log it, but it's much easier for us to be able to share that information, just information is power, so.
Noise@citynsb.com.
Noise@cityofnsb.com.
City of NSB, right.
Thank you, Goose.
Okay, are we ready to adjourn? Okay, then I'll close today's meeting with adjourned.